You're watching your wife being led away by the most powerful man on earth. You can't move. You can't speak. Around you, 50 senators sit frozen in their seats, wine cups trembling in their hands. Some of them are quietly hoping she'll be brought back soon. You're hoping for something else. You're hoping she doesn't say anything that gets you both killed. Time stretches in a way it shouldn't. Minutes crawl by. 20 minutes pass. It feels like 20 years. When he finally brings her back, he doesn't simply return her to your side. He sits down. He pours himself a glass of wine. And then, in front of everyone you know, he begins to speak. He describes what happened in that room, not vaguely, not indirectly, but in graphic, clinical detail. Your colleagues stare down at their plates. No one looks up. No one reacts. Your wife stares at nothing, and you understand what's expected of you. You smile. You nod. You thank him. Because you know the alternative. The alternative is watching your children die. This isn't madness. This isn't a loss of control. This is a machine, a system designed with precision to dismantle the human soul. A structure built to humiliate, dominate, and break people without ever needing to draw blood. And the man who built this system didn't create it by accident. He learned it. He learned it by watching his entire family be murdered by the emperor who came before him. His name was Caligula. What he did to Rome wasn't random cruelty. It wasn't impulsive violence. It was calculated, organized, so disturbing, so methodically evil, that 2,000 years later we're still trying to understand how a single human being could design this level of psychological warfare. If you believe the darkest figures in history need to be remembered, consider liking this video and subscribing. Your support helps bring more stories out of the darkest corners of the human record. Now, let's return to the man who turned cruelty into an art form. Stay with me because what you're about to hear gets worse. Much worse. And the most terrifying part isn't just what he did. It's that the system he built outlived him. Before we walk through the 5 acts of Caligula's terror machine, there's something crucial you need to understand. He wasn't born evil. He was manufactured, and that process began when he was just 7 years old. So before we get to the machine he unleashed on Rome, you need to see where the machine began. Not in the Senate, not in the palace, but in a place that looks, at first glance, almost harmless. Picture it. It's the year 14 AD. A small boy, 6, maybe 7, runs through a Roman military camp, weaving between tents and armor racks like he belongs there. He isn't just visiting. He's part of the scenery. He's wearing a miniature legionnaire uniform, tiny armor, a child-sized soldier's kit, and those unmistakable little red boots. And the men around him aren't gentle people. They're hardened soldiers, veterans, who have conquered half the known world. Men who have seen blood, fire, and war up close. But when they see this child, they laugh. They scoop him up. They lift him into the air. They toss him from arm to arm like a charm they don't want to drop. And they give him a name, Caligula. Little Boots, because to them, he isn't just a boy. He's a symbol. He's the son of Germanicus, Rome's greatest general since Julius Caesar himself. The soldiers don't just respect Germanicus, they worship him. He's their hero, their pride, their proof that Rome is unstoppable. And because they worship the father, they adore the child. This boy becomes their mascot, their good luck charm. Wherever Germanicus goes, little Caligula follows. Always nearby, always watched, always celebrated. And the soldiers truly believe, that this child brings them victory. So, he grows up inside that atmosphere, surrounded by devotion, protected by the most powerful army on earth, treated like he's untouchable, invincible, loved, safe, and he has absolutely no idea what's coming. 1 year later, everything falls apart. Caligula's father is dead. The official explanation is neat and bloodless. A sudden illness. No warning. No struggle. Just a name added to the list of the dead. But in Rome, clean stories are never trusted. The whispers begin immediately. poison. A quiet order, a command carried out by someone close to the emperor, perhaps even the emperor himself. No proof is ever offered. None is required. Caligula is 8 years old when the machine turns toward his family. What follows is not chaos. It is not a single burst of violence. It is a sequence, controlled, deliberate, one removal at a time. First, his mother. She is dragged from her home and accused of treason against the emperor. The charge is vague, as treason always is. It does not need evidence, only accusation. With her arrest, the family's protection disappears. The message is clear. No one is untouchable anymore. Then come the brothers. The oldest is arrested and thrown into prison. He is not executed. That would be mercy. Instead, he is starved. Days stretch into weeks. Hunger becomes a tool. Desperation erodes dignity. At some point, survival overrides everything else, and he tries to eat the stuffing from his mattress. This is not punishment. This is demonstration. The second brother is sent away, exiled to an island. Isolation replaces imprisonment. There, guards torture him, not to extract information, not to correct behavior, but to break him, slowly, repeatedly, until the pain becomes unbearable. In the end, he smashes his own head against the walls to make it stop. One by one, they vanish, and Caligula watches. He is not spared because he is innocent. He is spared because he is useful. A reminder, a hostage, a survivor kept alive by calculation. Every day he remains breathing, teaches him the same lesson. Survival depends on silence, on stillness, on learning how power operates before it turns on you again. By the time Caligula reaches 19, there is no family left to erase. He is the last one standing, the sole survivor of his entire bloodline. This is not told to excuse what he will become. It is told to explain the environment that shapes him. When a child grows up watching authority dismantle his family piece by piece, something fundamental is learned. Fear is not random. Violence is not impulsive. And mercy is not a virtue, it is a choice made by those who hold power. This is the foundation, because anyone who survives inside a system of terror does not merely endure it. They study it. They memorize its patterns. And when the opportunity comes, they understand exactly how to rebuild it. And Caligula is paying attention. And then the summons arrives. Emperor Tiberius wants to see him. There is no invitation. There is no refusal. In Rome, a summons from the emperor is not a request, it is a sentence waiting to be completed. Caligula is taken to Capri, a small island off the coast of Italy. On the surface, it looks like paradise. Blue water, sunlight, quiet. But Capri is not a retreat. It is a fortress. Tiberius has chosen this place carefully, far from Rome, far from the Senate, far from anyone who might question what happens behind closed doors. This is power without witnesses. Ancient historians, Suetonius, Tacitus, men writing within living memory of these events, describe Capri with a phrase that echoes across centuries. A house of horrors, not rumor, not legend, testimony. Accounts written by people who understood exactly what kind of world existed there. Tiberius, once a capable ruler, has deteriorated. He is paranoid, isolated, consumed by suspicion. He surrounds himself with astrologers who claim to read destiny and yes-men who never contradict him. Boredom becomes dangerous in a man with absolute power. And so, cruelty becomes entertainment. New humiliations are invented, new punishments designed. Not for justice, not for order, simply to pass the time. Into this environment walks a teenage Caligula. He knows the truth. He knows Tiberius destroyed his family. Everyone knows it. But knowledge is useless here if it cannot be spoken. One wrong look, one visible flicker of grief, one moment of anger, and he is dead. So Caligula does the only thing that guarantees survival. he disappears. He does not protest. He does not accuse. He does not even remember out loud. Instead, he watches. He studies when to speak and when to remain silent. He learns how to bury emotions so deeply that it never reaches his face. He becomes exactly what Tiberius expects him to be: obedient, entertaining, harmless, present but never threatening. Suetonius later captures this transformation in a single chilling sentence: "There never was a better servant or a worse master." This is not praise. It is diagnosis. For 6 years, Caligula learns the mechanics of domination, not through instruction, but through observation. He watches how fear is cultivated, not through constant violence, but through unpredictability, how silence is enforced not only with executions, but with the possibility of them, how power works best when people begin to police themselves. He learns that open brutality is inefficient, that humiliation lasts longer than pain, that forcing people to smile is more effective than forcing them to scream. Under Tiberius, cruelty is not explosive. It is casual, routine, sometimes even bored. And that is the lesson Caligula absorbs most deeply. Terror does not need spectacle. It needs structure. Capri is not just where Caligula survives. It is where he is trained, because tyranny is not spontaneous. It is learned behavior, passed down, refined, perfected in silence. And when Caligula eventually leaves this island, he does not carry rage alone with him. He carries technique. And the education is almost complete. And then Tiberius dies. Some say it was natural causes. Others whisper that Caligula smothered him with a pillow. The truth no longer matters. What matters is the outcome. The 19-year-old hostage is now the most powerful person on earth. Rome celebrates. The city believes it is welcoming the son of Germanicus, the golden heir to a beloved legacy. Ceremonies are held. Promises are made. Hope briefly returns to a city that has learned to live carefully. They have no idea what they have just crowned. Because this is not a madman stumbling into power. This is a student who has completed his training. For 6 years, Caligula studied under the most dangerous ruler Rome had ever known. He learned how fear is applied and withdrawn, how silence is enforced without orders, how humiliation breaks people more efficiently than execution. For 7 months, everything appears perfect. Then Caligula gets sick. A sudden fever, a collapse, days lost to delirium. What happened during that illness is something historians will never fully understand. But when he recovers, the man who rises from the bed is not the same one who entered it. Something inside him has fractured, and Rome is about to discover what he has been hiding. What follows is not random violence. It is not chaos. It is not the behavior of a madman. Caligula does not lash out blindly. He builds a system, 5 distinct acts of psychological warfare, each designed to attack a different part of the human spirit. And what makes it terrifying is not the brutality, but the precision. This is the blueprint. Act 1 begins with his sister. Caligula has 3 sisters, but Drusilla is different. Ancient sources say their relationship crossed lines that even Rome found disturbing. Whether the rumors of incest were true or simply political propaganda is beside the point. What matters is that everyone believed them, and Caligula does nothing to stop the rumors. He encourages them. Rome watches. Whispers spread. No one challenges him. No one dares to ask questions. The audience learns how to behave. Then Drusilla dies. What happens next reveals the core of Caligula's system. He does not mourn privately. He does not grieve quietly. Instead, he takes his personal loss and forces the entire empire to experience it with him. First, he orders the Senate to declare Drusilla a goddess. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. Officially, temples are built, altars are raised. Romans are required to worship a dead woman because the emperor says she is divine. Rome complies. Then Caligula declares a period of mourning. At first, it sounds ceremonial, but this is where it turns monstrous. Laughter becomes a capital crime. Bathing becomes a capital crime. Eating dinner with your family becomes a capital crime. For weeks, perhaps months, ordinary life becomes dangerous. A child smiles at breakfast. A neighbor laughs without thinking. A family gathers around a table. Any of it can now mean death. Caligula is forcing Rome to feel what he feels whether they want to or not. This is not about grief. It is about control. He has learned that if he can legislate emotion, criminalize happiness, and turn his inner world into law, then nothing truly belongs to anyone anymore. And once he understands he can control how people feel, he begins to test what else he can take from them. The machine has begun to move. Once Caligula understands that emotion itself can be controlled, he pushes the experiment further. Grief was only the first test. Now he wants to know what else can be taken. Act 2 of the machine targets something Rome values even more than life: honor. This part of the story is so disturbing that historians still debate whether it happened exactly as described or was later exaggerated. But the ancient sources agree on the core claim. Caligula establishes a brothel inside the imperial palace, not hidden, not unofficial, operating openly, as a business. And it is not staffed by common prostitutes. It is staffed by the sons and daughters of Rome's noble families, the aristocracy, the senators, the people who govern provinces and command legions. Heralds are sent into the streets to announce prices, different rates for married women and unmarried women, special rates for virgins from senatorial families. This is not excess. This is policy. And then comes the detail that makes it especially cruel. Caligula allegedly keeps ledgers, detailed records, names, dates, transactions, the bureaucratic accounting of humiliation. Consider what this does psychologically. If you are a Roman nobleman, your entire identity is built on family honor. Your lineage stretches back generations. Your name carries weight, and now that name is being shouted in the streets, attached to a price, and there is a ledger that records it. And you can do nothing, because the alternative is execution. Caligula is not simply taking bodies. He is stripping away the one thing Roman aristocracy values above all else: reputation, legacy, the family name. But even this is not enough, because Caligula realizes something else. Public humiliation is powerful, but private humiliation performed in public is devastating. So the machine evolves again. Act 3. The banquet of predation. Picture the scene. You are seated at an imperial banquet beside your wife. Around you sit dozens of senators with their wives. Everyone drinks wine that tastes like fear. Caligula stands. The room goes silent. He walks slowly between the tables, studying the women. His gaze is not lustful. It is clinical, evaluative. He stops at your table. He examines your wife the way one inspects an animal before purchase. Teeth, hair, body. He does not ask permission. He does not acknowledge you exist. He takes her hand and leads her away, and you remain seated, because you know the rule now. If you stand, if you object, if you show emotion, you will not leave this room alive. Neither will she. Neither will your children. So you sit, you drink, you wait. 20 minutes. 30. The conversation around you is brittle, forced. A joke is made and dies instantly. Then he returns her. She sits down. She does not look at you. And Caligula sits down too. He stays. And in front of everyone, your friends, your rivals, your colleagues, he describes what just happened. Slowly, clinically, in detail. He jokes. He compares. He evaluates. And you smile. You laugh. You nod as if this is normal. Because this is not about your wife. It is about you, your authority, your dignity, your ability to protect your family, all destroyed in public. And tomorrow, you will return. You will smile again. You will pretend nothing happened while everyone knows exactly what did. This is the genius of the machine. Caligula is no longer breaking individuals. He is breaking the bonds between them, forcing everyone to witness, forcing everyone to remain silent, turning survival into complicity. But the machine is still not finished, because Caligula has identified a bond stronger than honor, stronger than marriage. And what comes next will target that bond directly. What comes next is where the machine reaches a new level, so extreme that modern psychologists would later study it as a textbook example of systematic psychological torture, because Caligula realizes something crucial. There is a bond stronger than marriage, stronger than reputation, stronger than honor. The bond between a parent and a child. This is Act 4 of the machine, the grieving father. And this is the point where the story becomes almost unbearable to hear. If you need to pause, that reaction is human. By now, Caligula is no longer executing people for treason, not for crimes, not even for political necessity. He kills because he is bored, because he is irritated, because he wants to observe what happens next. But this time, he adds a rule, a protocol. If a man's son is executed, the father must watch, not from a distance, not from behind a wall. Front row, close enough to hear it, close enough to see every movement, close enough that there is no escape, not even into denial. This alone would be cruelty. But Caligula goes further. Suetonius records one incident that reveals the true purpose of the act. A father watches his son die. Immediately afterward, Caligula orders the man to be brought to the imperial palace for dinner. That same night, no time to grieve, no time to collapse. The body is still warm somewhere in the city. The father is seated at the emperor's table, and Caligula does not speak much. He watches. He studies the man's face the way a scientist watches a specimen. He is not interested in punishment anymore. He is testing something, waiting to see if the father will cry, if his hands will shake, if his voice will break. Any sign of pain, any visible grief. Because if the father shows emotion, any emotion at all, Caligula knows the job is not finished, that something human still survives, that there is still something left to destroy. So the man eats food he cannot taste. He answers questions he cannot hear. He forces his face into stillness while his child lies dead somewhere beyond the walls. And the man responsible for it all watches him, calmly, as if observing an experiment. This is not just murder. This is the theft of grief. Caligula is no longer taking lives. He is taking the right to mourn. He is transforming the deepest human bond, parent and child, into a source of terror instead of comfort. Because now, love itself becomes dangerous. If you love someone, that love can be used against you. The deeper the bond, the more precise the weapon. The more you care, the easier you are to break. Caligula has discovered something monstrous. When fear controls emotion, it does not need violence anymore, and in doing so, he makes the most human instinct of all love into a liability. And here is the part no one anticipated. The machine had a flaw, a fatal one. For years, Caligula aimed his cruelty at senators and noblemen, men trained to survive humiliation, men who understood politics, men who could rationalize suffering as the price of staying alive. They had estates to protect, families to shield, futures to bargain for. Fear worked on them because they still believed survival was worth the cost. Then Caligula made a mistake. He turned that same casual cruelty on the wrong kind of man, a soldier. This was the final act of the machine, the wrong man. His name was Cassius Chaerea, a senior officer of the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's personal bodyguards. These were not politicians. These were elite soldiers, armed, disciplined, trained to kill, men who stood within arm's reach of the emperor every single day, blades at their sides. Chaerea had one physical trait Caligula found endlessly amusing: a high-pitched voice, and Caligula could not let it go. Day after day, the mockery continued. Public jokes, casual insults. Humiliation turned into entertainment. But the most revealing detail came from military ritual itself. Each day, a guard was required to ask the emperor for the password, a formal procedure, performed in front of the other soldiers. When it was Chaerea's turn, Caligula deliberately assigned passwords like Venus or Priapus. Effeminate. Sexual. Designed to provoke laughter. The other guards smirked. The ritual repeated. Again and again. For Caligula, it was forgettable humor. For Chaerea, it was poison. Here was the miscalculation. Senators endured humiliation because they wanted to live. They could justify silence. They could explain fear, but Chaerea was a soldier trained for violence, accustomed to death, standing close enough to strike every single day, and Caligula had taught him something dangerous. That life under this emperor was no longer worth preserving. The machine had made Caligula arrogant, certain that fear always wins. He forgot the oldest rule of predators. Never corner something that can kill you. On January 24th, 41 AD, it took less than 60 seconds. Caligula was leaving the theater, passing through a narrow underground corridor. Dim, claustrophobic, stone walls on both sides. As was routine, Chaerea stepped forward and asked for the day's password. Caligula, confident, mocking to the end, replied with one final insult. It was the last thing he ever said. Chaerea drove his sword up under the emperor's ribs. Caligula stumbled, tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. The corridor was too narrow. Conspirators closed in from both ends. According to the sources, 30 stab wounds followed. They did not stop until there was nothing left that could still be alive. 4 years of humiliation, fear, and accumulated rage were released in less than a minute. The monster was dead. And then it became worse. The conspirators did not stop with Caligula. They killed his wife, Caesonia. Then they found his daughter, Julia Drusilla, barely 2 or 3 years old. To make sure no heir survived, a soldier smashed the child's head against a marble wall. This is what happens when the machine breaks. It does not shut down. It devours everything connected to it. For a brief moment, Rome thought change might come. The Senate debated restoring the Republic, ending the empire. But while they argued, the Praetorian Guard looted the palace. Behind a curtain, they found a trembling man, Claudius, Caligula's uncle. They did not see a weak fool. They saw a new emperor. They proclaimed him on the spot. The system survived. That is the real horror. Caligula ruled for less than 4 years. A footnote in Roman time. And yet, 2,000 years later, we still speak his name, not because he was insane, but because he proved something terrifying. That an entire state can be turned into a machine for psychological destruction. And once built, that machine does not die with its creator. It simply waits for the next operator. If you found this story thought-provoking, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. History is not only about what happened, but why it mattered. Follow for more stories that explore power, fear, and the human mind.